By the time I got to Boston, we had enough guys on the team that could help win a game. So I learned there to rely so much more on other guys. And whatever the play calls, whatever the coach calls, I knew that there was somebody on my left or on my right that could help win the game. And so by the time I got to Miami, it wasn't even a question. It was like, just win. Being on the Heat, there was so much hate from everybody. Didn't want the Heat to win. Obviously, the situation coming from Boston, where half of Massachusetts or all of Massachusetts was rooting against me.
For Miami, number 34, Ray Allen.
You're so driven to win, so you do whatever you need to do that's necessary to help the team win. And I think there was such a great connectivity amongst the players. It was easy to swallow that pill and just say, we're going to do whatever we got to do to win. And winning, it cures all things. The way the team was ran in Miami, I wasn't starting a game where the ball had to come through me. It was more random, and between D-Wade, LeBron, and CB, those starter minutes are so different from bench minutes, because the more you're in a game, the more you catch your rhythm and the more you're part of the flow. And as a person coming off the bench, you have to find your flow early. And if you don't have it, then you get taken out of the game. So that's the adjustment that you have to make when you come back to a team where you're not one of the core three players that, the rotation is coming back to. You couldn't really waste the time and come in, feel the atmosphere, or trying to kind of settle your way into the game. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but in American Airlines Arena during the playoffs, I was going up to the practice court and I was shooting in the first quarter. When these guys were playing, I was going up there shooting and getting ready. I wasn't even watching the game because I felt like I was at a disadvantage because they were getting so warm and the intensity of the moment is so great. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna match that. I needed to have a lather coming into the game, so I was like, let me go create my own lather. I don't want to just be sitting on the bench and then coming into the game cold. I always say that in order to become a better basketball player, you have to become a better person. Understanding relationships, understanding, when you're lazy, it kind of translates throughout your whole life. So I have to give credit to golf, because one day I was sitting on the golf course. I was 24 years old, and it was a 100-yard shot, and there was nothing in the way but the green. So as I was sitting there, I thought to myself, I don't know where this is going because I've actually never practiced this shot. And I expect to have a positive result. And in that moment, I said to myself, wow, I play basketball the same way, because my brain processes activity the same way. Like, because you're young and you're athletic, you just go out there and do it and you can figure it out. So when I got back to the court that fall, I said to myself, work on everything that you do in a game on the court, because the beautiful thing about basketball is the simple fact that the court doesn't change. It's still 94 feet and 10-foot basket. So how I had to take control of that is work everything to the point where I couldn't fail. You're making all these moves and these motions on the floor. After a while, like when you look at the three-point line, I know how far I am from half court to the baseline, to the elbow, to the top of the key, because I've ran those steps so many times. You feel where the basket is being juxtaposition to your body. It was a physical thing where you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I fatigue my body so much to the point where it doesn't bother me anymore? So when I go into the game, my body can just react. We knew the time was now when we were built to win. And we all wanted to win. We had all been in losing situations before, so we knew that the sacrifices that we made all year were going to pay off for us. But we also knew that sometimes you just get beat by a better team, and you tip your hat off to them and move forward. But just like we're talking about it now, 7 years later, it has a lasting effect on our children and on the community forever. So we knew then, like, make the sacrifices now, because this is going to be something you're going to talk about for the rest of your life. And to have regret is one of the worst emotions to have, not only in sports, but in life. So Chris and I now, we can be observers now. We can do the things we want to do, but we knew and we know now that we gave everything we had at the moment.
When I started playing basketball in early ages, someone told me, hey man, all you got to do for rebounds is get there before the ball gets there, and then watch the flight of the ball.
Down here, we have to be poised, not frantic, okay? Trust each other.
If you watch the replay in that instance, I had nobody box me out, usually because somebody's in your way, right? Because if you're looking, you might get hit in the chest, you might get elbowed in the face. That's a very dangerous thing to do, right? LeBron takes a deep three. On my way to the goal, I pretty much watched the ball the whole way, and it was, just one of those instances where I grabbed it, and I heard somebody say, CB, like loud as hell. So I knew I couldn't put the ball down. That's all I really knew.
To Allen, his three-pointer, bang!
It's interesting because if I don't make that shot, it's pretty easy for me to say that we don't win the championship, and things happen differently from there. It changes a lot about history. That's why that shot was the shot heard around the world, because it changed the complexity of what the NBA looked like, what it could have looked like. We can have this conversation with a lot of glee, knowing that we did our jobs. And now people can talk about it and they can try to measure it with another game, another shot, another team, whatever it may be. But we put the best stuff out there to give people something to talk about. We made history. The thing that I learned from watching other guys retire is that because you were a great NBA player doesn't mean that you have carte blanche into your next life. Doesn't mean that you're supposed to get a GM job or you're supposed to just be offered 50 million things. I've seen other guys think because they were this great Hall of Fame player that they're supposed to be offered, positions in organizations. You have to work for that. And the thing that I've told myself is if I do decide to take on another endeavor, I'm going to work at it just as much as I worked at playing basketball. I don't want to be someone who doesn't have the work ethic that allows me to be great at whatever else it is I choose to do, because I know what it took for me to be consistent. And you could talk about great on the floor, but greatness is just consistency. Now I can always go back to those days I spent, long nights on the court, getting up early in the morning, and I knew that it was for something down the line. All the shots I've hit to win games, Game 6 is a culmination of all of them, and it's the cream of the crop because it was on such a stage, and it just taught me that, hey, when you put the work in, there's nothing anybody can tell you. The ball is always going to come to you, and you'll be ready to answer the bell.
And I guess my final question, how do you know when you have put the work in or you are putting the work in?
You just never know, because there's no point in my career where I sat back and said, man, I'm really good. I think the moment you think you're really good is the moment when you stop working. I always felt like I could get better. I always use the example, we played Toronto on a home and home, Monday, Tuesday. So I had 40, and then the very next day we didn't have shoot around, but I was in the gym shooting. I was in there by myself. So the Toronto coach comes in and he looked at me and goes, what are you doing out here? You killed us last night. You're the last one to be shooting. And I said, well, if I want to do it again, I got to put the same work in that I put in yesterday. You can't get too big for your britches and think that you don't have to work anymore because you put out a successful effort or you won something. Like, the minute you do that is the minute that you regress and end up putting yourself in a situation where you can't make a shot.